Hello, everybody. It is Vanessa Cruz here, coming to you solo this week. Both Claudia and Phil had prior commitments, so I'm excited to be here today. And we have a great guest that's going to be speaking with us. But before we get going, I always like to recap the past month events and everything that happened in our local Austin chapter. We had a great VCC earlier in March where we talked about Canva. We had gotten some great feedback that we wanted those people wanted those meetings to have a little bit more information and feedback. And so we did a great little display from Canva from one of our fellow Austin members. So if there's advice, feedback, anything you'd ever like to share with the team or see in any of our meetings, you could always reach out to us and let us know. Here at Membership, we're always trying to make sure that you're getting the most out of your ICF Austin membership. So yeah, that was really exciting. And then tomorrow, what day is it? Tomorrow we have at 6 p.m. How to Build Your Business by Speaking, the Inside Scoop with Denise Hedges from 6 to 8 p.m. I'm really excited. I'm going to join that. I'm trying to learn, when you become a coach, everybody's like, you got to do podcasts, you got to have speaking engagements, you got to do this, you got to do that. So this one spoke to me because I was like, all right, how do I get a speaking engagement? Obviously, I have no problem talking, but I love to understand more about the logistics of it. So that'll be tomorrow night. And then I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about TCC, the Texas Coaches Coalition, that was just this past weekend. I was able to attend for my first time, and I'm still digesting it. Couldn't recommend it more. I've said this before about every event that I've ever gone to in this coaching space, that it's like a warm hug, right? Like, networking events can sometimes be awkward and you feel uncomfortable, but anytime I've gone to a coaching event, it is just the most welcoming, warming, calm, great environment that you dream of. I didn't know anybody really that was going, and I went solo, and I know I made some lifelong friends, some great people from all over the country, and we had some international folks that joined that shared about their programs. But I learned so much, and really just like filled my cup, inspired me in so many ways. I was just telling Phil earlier today, like, oh, now what do I do? I have so much great information, so many great resources to reach out to, and I'm just trying to digest it all. But next year is already being planned, right? And I couldn't recommend it more. It was started on Thursday till Sunday, and every day there's great sessions, breakouts. You can meet a great group of people. It was everything you would want out of a retreat and conference. And I want to say thank you to everybody who put it on. And I really look forward to staying in touch with all the people that I met. It was such a great weekend. And again, couldn't recommend it more. But yes, to move into today's show, I'm really excited to welcome Bikram Gupta Sarma. He is going to join us, and I'll let him give his intro because he can say it best. So welcome, Bikram. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Vanessa. So I,
How are you?
I actually was a leader in a technology in multiple technology companies for about 35 years before I pivoted a couple of years ago to this position of coaching, right? And now I work with leaders themselves. So I've been in their shoes, and so I understand some of the jargon and terminology that they bring up. Most of my clients are in technology themselves. It's basically I just use my network to kind of reach out, and so some of the issues that they find are very familiar to me. And
Yeah.
I was fortunate when it's about 20 years ago I got an executive coach,
Oh,
and
nice.
that person, actually John, he completely changed my thinking. So as I got into this, I'm like, was it John, or is there a whole method to this madness? And there is a method to this madness, right? As we have
Yeah.
discovered, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so was it John that got you excited to transition into coaching, or what can you share a little bit more about the decisions that went into that for you?
Yeah, so so John kind of 20 years ago, he coached me, and then I've had a pretty successful career after that. But then COVID hit, and when COVID hit, that's when I started doing googling and stuff, and then got uh, got into a training institute, spent 125 hours training and certified, and all the ICF. After so many years of getting out of school, I actually did a 3 hour ICF exam, which was
Yeah.
a difficult one to do. But yeah, that's how it got to be started. And so
Yeah.
some of my clients have basically appreciated it, what I bring to the table.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think I've met a lot of people who are like, "All right, now what?" And COVID did that for a lot of people, that they were like, "All right, I wanna rethink this a little bit." I know when you reached out, you shared a little bit that you know the mistakes that leaders make. So, what would be your advice around that, especially from the coaching lens?
Right. I primarily see five different areas that, at least my clients, they made these issues, right? Mistakes. So one is, of course, the mistakes they make is self performance versus team performance. So they work a lot about improving themselves and not about improving the teams. And because the technology is so fast moving, and like every couple of years you have a new paradigm, they are always playing catch up, both
Right.
themselves as well as the teams. So that's one major mistake that they make. The other is, how can they work with partners, right? It could be a matrix team within the same company, it could be another company, or it could be, what I like to talk about mostly is the global teams, right? How can they be successful in that, right? So these are the two primary mistakes that they do. And then, of course, there is always, in technology as in other areas, there's always how to do more with less, right? So
Yeah.
you're always kind of figuring out, I don't have the resources, so as a coach, we get into conversations about what can you do with what you have, right? And that
Yeah.
that helps, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned too that you work across the globe, right? You have teams and have worked with different companies, both internationally. So I'm curious what like you think is the biggest connector across the globes, and then obviously some advice you'd share for global teams.
Right, and I do this as a part of my coaching practice. So let me give you a little bit of backstory here, right? When I was working, and primarily this particular thing happened when I was at Oracle. We had teams all across the globe, as you know, it's a global company. I personally was managing teams, delivery teams in China, Philippines, Chile, Romania, Egypt, India, and Ireland.
Oh
So
wow.
that's like seven countries, right? And what I learned is, uh, you know uh, coming in from a US centric viewpoint, number one, you're working with different time zones, right? So that's a challenge. Number two, you're working with different cultures, and you
Right.
need to understand that. And so I started to kind of understand what are the parameters that drive working with global teams, right? And then when I kind of pivoted into the whole coaching area, find the leaders having the same issues. I'm not getting enough performance from the team, sitting in some other time zone, and the communication is always an issue, right? So that's what got me started with global teams, right? And I came up with this little bit of a framework. If you, it's like loosey goosey, but basically I call it the OCE framework, because people have a tendency to club outsourcing, captive teams, and extended teams, and I'll explain extended teams in a moment, into the same bucket. Um, they are very different, the way you kind of manage them, the way you work with them, right? So the OCE framework, actually, the O stands for outsourcing, C stands
Mhm.
for captive, and E stands for extended. Outsourcing is very simple. You just give over some particular activities to somebody else, and they manage everything from from right from the beginning as to who works on the team, and you don't really control that. You just control the output.
Right.
Captive, on the other hand, which is what I learned at Oracle, basically, is that all these teams that the countries I talked about, we have to manage them from the US. So it's like an Oracle China or a Oracle Romania, right? It's a captive team. It's not, but people use the term outsource for that. It's not really. It's a part of your organization, and so basically that's extended is a new concept that has really come up in the last 10 years or so. The professional employment organizations that actually do everything, from hiring and real estate and local labor laws and compliance stuff. You But you kind of partner with them and manage that team. So one of the things that I talk with leaders when we give it to global teams is, what do you really want to do? Because they all kind of get mixed up. No, I want to do this, I want to do that, and that is, I would call that a strategy and the assessment phase of the three-phase approach that I take. And the strategy and assessment phase is mostly understanding what do they really want to do, and then
Yeah.
they understand the differences in these models.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a central coaching theme as well, right? Like, what do you really want? And spending the time to identify that, which
Right.
can bring so much clarity in how it comes up. So, what
Right.
would you say, like, in all of your coach training and everything, the impact coaching has had across these different teams now that you've like introduced it?
Yeah, it has a lot. I mean, just the way we are trained as coaches, right? I kind of tell them there are multiple parameters to this whole framework, right? So who's the leader, right? Who is the local leader? What do you want from them? How are they leading it? What is the second thing is, what are the portfolio of projects you want to do there? Are the projects dependent on output from somewhere else? um, and then who's managing this, right? Is it some US leader who manages, let's say, let's take an example, Romania, right? Does he or she understand the culture of that place? That's the fourth parameter. And then how do you get the resource? So it goes on and on. These questions about, are you trying to fit in a square peg in a round hole? Is it like you're going into Mexico, where the labor laws are very different, and you have 35 days of vacation, versus in the US, which is different, and you are trying to do
Yeah.
that, right? So this
Yeah.
goes on and on, and that's basically a lot of the coaching practice is based on that.
Yeah. How receptive have your teams been? Like you obviously went, you got all this training. You were fortunate enough to have an executive coach through your career. How receptive has your team been when you try to like bring in different coaching concepts?
Yeah, so basically, when I work with my clients and go through these parameters, it's like wide-eyed. They're like hearing about, oh, it's so much of work is involved, right? I mean, because a lot of people, without understanding their strategy, without designing through these parameters that I spoke about, they start the execution straight away,
Right.
and then things start hitting them, right? Oh no, I'm not getting the outcome that I wanted, which is very coach. One of the things that a coach can help is
Yeah.
understand what is the outcome that you really want, and how
Yeah.
do you go about getting that outcome. So I have worked with clients, and one particular client of mine right now, they have teams in Australia, India, Costa Rica, and San Francisco Bay Area. and they have kind of understood, and a lot of the senior leadership is actually, even just post COVID, because things have opened up, are flying to these locations just to be able to understand what's happening on the ground. How are these cultures working, right? And getting the best optimal feedback
Right.
from those teams, right? And that's where the coaching has really helped, is just for them to understand that you cannot look at everything through a single lens.
Yeah, I love that. You can't look through lenses, but you have to understand all the lenses you put on before you can, you know, realize that you have them on there in the first place, and then
That,
opening
that,
that up to better understand the different cultures around the globe.
right.
So that makes me go on to the next topic, right? So you mentioned clients. Do you currently have like your own practice outside of your work that you are building? Can you tell us more about that?
So my work right now is basically just coaching. so
Yeah.
so I built a solo company, and I try to bring in clients into that, and basically advise them on this. So I call my practice as, or what I try to do, I call it impactful leadership. And
I
all
love
the
that.
all the issues that I talked about earlier, that I see the mistakes that leaders make, I kind of highlight that, and we go through each one of them. And typically, as I said, those 4 or 5 things, that those are, you can just bucketize them. It's not like force fitting it, but the challenges that people have fit into one of those 5 issues. How do I work with global teams? How do I work with
Right.
matrix teams? What, self and team performance, right? Doing more with less, and so on and so forth, right? And that basically gets the conversation going. And as I mentioned, most of my clients are technology leaders themselves, starting with, starting from the top, mostly CEOs, the next level, going all the way down to maybe senior directors, and they all benefit from that. I've got some very good feedback from these people as I work with them. And every session when I start on, I'm like, what do you want? What is the best? This, can we make the best use? And how would this 1 hour make it the best hour of your week? you
Yeah,
know
I love that.
and so they
Yeah.
talk about, okay, this is the outcome that I'm trying to do, and we've talked through various issues, and I try to be a mirror to them. I tell them right up front when I start the engagement, I'm your partner and mirror, and I will replay back to you what I've heard from you. So the
Great.
clients, as you know, in the coaching profession, the clients have all the answers in their head. The coach's job is to get those answers out, right? So,
Yeah.
and these questions that I just talked about earlier, it's exactly the same. It's like they
Yeah.
start to open up, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was mentioning before you jumped on that this past weekend I was at the Texas Coaches Coalition conference, and one of the speakers spoke about that we're a mirror, and then the metaphor she gave also was like, imagine that we're like a whiteboard, right? So it's an extension of your mind, and I'm helping just whiteboard it out where you can just dump it all out. We can whiteboard it, see what comes up for you. And I love that. I was like, "Oh, that's such a great way to think of it as well as the mirror," right? Like, okay, you have this is what you're saying to me. What does it feel like to hear that back from, that
Yeah.
if that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah. Right, right. You're exactly spot on. One of the challenges that I see a lot of leaders have, they have a self perception. And then
Yeah.
when I talk with them, I tell them, hey, this is what I heard, right?
Yeah.
Is this
They're
what
like,
you
"Wait,
meant? And
what?"
they're like,
Yeah.
oh, no, there's a gap. Hold on, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what your teams and your, others you talk to, they hear you, because I heard that, right?
This.
And
And so that's what
and
they're
that
gonna hear. Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. Tell me more about like your favorite client and who you think are the right type of people to get or are receptive to coaching.
So, as I said, right, I mostly work with technology people. So I've been in technology myself, so this is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek statement, right? So, uh, mostly I've led teams of engineers, and engineers um, are not very good at emotional intelligence, right? And there is a reason for that. There is a reason that neuroscience has basically said there are two parts in our brain, and one is analytical and the one is social, and basically these two work as a seesaw, right? So if you and engineers are very analytical, so their social skills, and as a coach, our job is to kind of exercise both parts of the brain, right? And I have worked with engineers all my life, right, as leaders, and I was always used to wonder why would they just come in, go straight to their desk, start working, start coding, and not even say hello to the people next to them, right? It's like
Right. Yeah.
that's how they're built, right? And
Yeah.
so as I work with technology leaders, I do a lot of emphasis on the EI part, right? And in fact, I do these free webinars or masterclasses or whatever you want to call them, just for giving back to the community of technology people. I call it the neuroscience of UI. Explain to them what is really going on and how they can be successful, take good decisions, and through understanding a better understanding of the EI part. Um, and so
Yeah.
my favorite client is somebody who comes in who has no understanding of EI, right? And then basically, as we work through these models and discussions and everything, all of a sudden they go back and they figure out, oh yeah, they do more research, come back and say, yeah, tell me more. I'm like, no, you tell me more. What do you want to
Yeah.
do? Because I'm not an advisor, I'm a coach, right?
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so that those are very interesting. I mean, I see them completely. It's like they've all of a sudden they've stumbled into something new, right? and
Mhm.
and then they start getting better at self-awareness, uh, understanding others better, and so on and so forth. The UI competencies, right?
Yeah.
So that that is an ideal client that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. I recently have learned more about neuroscience and I am fascinated by it. Like I am just my mind is blown about how it all works, right? And then how this can be applied to coaching. Can you tell me a little bit more about like your interest in neuroscience and how you brought that into your practice?
Yeah. So so couple of years ago, as a geek, right? I started, looking. Hey, you know what? There are two ways to approach. Obviously, what happens in the brain, right? One is the psychological, going to a therapist, the therapy way, and the other is the neuroscience way, right? And so, as a geek, I'm like, okay, let's understand more about the science. I had cousins who kind of had done some work on this, so I started understanding more from them, and then I said started getting a formal training to understand this better. And obviously, I mean, what 20 years ago we had heard the term. I had heard the term EI as Dan Coleman came about it and went through that, but it has made a lot of advances. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
they've attached neuroscience to the EI part, right? and
Yeah.
and basically, I have seen images of the brain in understanding this whole technology, that what happens, what is the stimulus and how does the brain react. And
Yeah.
so those are very, very fascinating, just like you mentioned, Vanessa. And
Yeah,
uh,
and when you get into that, that's where you actually see the lasting changes, right, that
exactly, exactly.
happen when you have that change in your brain, it's like you can't go back, right? You're
Yeah.
building new neural pathways that make it all
Exactly.
work.
Exactly. And then understanding more about how the how oxytocin or serotonin, stress and all
Yeah.
of that. and what is this doing to people. And you're right, building new neural pathways, and how it kind of completely rewires part of your brain. So yeah, that's been
It's fascinating.
that whole journey has been interesting. The way I bring it to my coaching is basically use some of those concepts, right? That
Yeah.
we've learned, and do that. So as a part of my assessment, the assessments before we start something, I also have this assessment of a EI assessment, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
basically it's a 360 and a 180 assessment. There are two different instruments, but basically just for people to start getting that feedback about the emotions that they, not only that they understand, but what they demonstrate. They are two
Yeah.
different things, right? I mean, I might be self-aware, but I might not be self-managed,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Exactly. So,
fascinating.
yeah,
I love that. Thank you. I could talk about this for forever, but as we're kind of running out of time and winding up,
yeah.
what am I going to say? I have so many more questions. How can people reach out to you? Would be the number one thing for anybody listening, and they're like, "Ooh, I'd love to work with him or learn more about him." What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, and you can look me up on LinkedIn. Bikram, I have a two-worded last name, so it confuses people. Gupta Sarma, Gupta space Sarma, or they can send me an email, Bikram at ibta global.com. And the
Awesome.
the reason I put in the word global is because I have clients in Australia, India, all over the place. So thanks to COVID and thanks to Zoom, we can
You
we
can
can
work
reach
with
out to whoever
everybody.
needs us, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then are there any resources or any books that you would recommend for um, either neuroscience or coaching or anything like that that you're like, "Hey, I found this great resource that you'd like to share?"
Yeah, yeah. So I do put in articles on LinkedIn and share some of these resources. And if you go to my website, which is www.impactfulleadership, there's a single L. So impactful and leadership, I just use
Okay.
the same .com. You can go to the resource page, and there's a lot of resources up there. My favorite on EI is a scarf model that was built by the name escapes me for the moment. Built by some, and that there are a lot of books on that area. So you basically, but they're all
Can
on my
see it there.
resource page.
But if they go to your website, so
Yeah, yeah.
impactfulleadership1l.com, people can find out more about you and
Exactly.
EI. That's
There's a
awesome.
there's a tab there called resource. Just click on that, and you'll see everything. Yeah.
Wonderful. I know I'm going to be checking it out. So thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say as we wrap up? I so appreciate you being here today. It was such a pleasure learning more about you.
No, it's been an honor. Thank you, Vanessa, for giving me the time, and very very good questions that
Yeah.
you asked. And yeah, it's been a journey. I'm on year two, starting year three in a month of my journey as a coach, and it's been very fulfilling. That's what I, as a coach, when I was getting into this profession, when I was pivoting after 35 years of technology, I'm like, how will it be? But then it really has become very very fulfilling and satisfying. And as you work with people and you see them not make the same mistakes that I did, right? And they starting to question the outcomes, it has been really truly gratifying. So yeah, thank you, Vanessa,
Yes.
again, for
Yes.
giving me
I
the
love that
time
you
and
shared that.
opportunity. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that's like my favorite thing, about coaching too, is seeing the changes in your clients. This just came up actually, since this is ICF Austin chapter. How have you enjoyed it so far? I know you joined this past year.
Yeah.
What has your experience been like in the ICF Austin chapter, and what would you tell anybody who's not yet a member about joining?
Oh, become a member. That's the thing I would tell them, right? Yeah, it's been really good meeting other coaches in the community in Austin, right, in the same time zone.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been an ICF member, and yes, I've been part of some coaches community, but it's always been a challenge. Hey, you know what, they're doing this. When I have a class, this has always been good. I think last December when we went for the winter social, I got to meet people
Yeah.
in person for the first time, right? And it
Yeah.
was really a good experience, a lot of
Yes.
conversations. And because of that, I got into one of the committees,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
yeah, and reach out committee, which Fred chairs. So yeah, it's been a really great journey.
I
Yeah.
love that, and I didn't pay him to say that. He said that all on his own. So, thank you.
I don't want the
Thank
payment.
you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bikram. As we kind of wrap up now, I'm just going to go over what we have coming up for April. So, Bikram, you're more than welcome to say. I'm not sure if Phil's going to let you hang up. But so we have coming up in April 13th, the ICF Southeast Region webinar series, Intuition and Coaching Mastery. How can they coexist? On April 14th, we have virtual coaching conversations coming up, which we're going to work on elevator pitches in regards to coaching and what you can say about yourself when you're trying to pitch to somebody you meet. On April 21st, we have Emotional Coaching for Higher Impact by Ellie Van Laar and ACC Happy Hour Book Club. On the 25th of April, we have our chapter meeting, annual general membership meeting. And then we're moving into May. But wow, we have a lot going on in April. So I hope to see you all there. I hope we have some new members. Come one, come all. These events are great. It doesn't matter where you are in your coaching journey. We welcome everybody from every stage. And we just love having new people join, older people join, older members join, everybody there just so we can connect. And as Bikram said, grow this beautiful coaching community, which is so beneficial and has been so helpful for me on my journey, is to be able to have all of these resources and other coaches to bounce ideas off of, cry to, all that fun stuff. But I'm so grateful for this community. It's been great seeing you again, and I look forward to our next podcast. Have a great day. Talk to you later.